So one of the things I think about is the kind of the current whole state of the union, if you want to call it, or whatever. What we mean by bots and AI and all these things. There's lots of talk about it, but one thing I was thinking is, where are we with the tech in terms of maturity? Like, if we compare it to, the kind of mobile PDA space, are we at the early Palm Pilot days, at the calculator watch days, or the iPhone days of it, or where is it? Who's got some thoughts on that?
I'm willing to give that one a stab. I reckon we're probably at the calculator watch stage. So, these things have been around for many years, not necessarily in the mainstream space, which is the biggest difference. So in the same way that, I reckon it's probably calculator watch stage for the majority of people. So there's obviously been a lot of press over the last 12 months about these things, being far better than they actually are. Thankfully, I think people are starting to understand more so what they are now. We've been building bots on IRC many years ago, and now it's just that it's on mainstream platforms. And they're not really that different to what they used to be. It's just that they're on mainstream platforms.
Okay. And anyone else got any sort of thoughts? Disagree? Agree? Disagree?
I sort of think that there is a slight jump in terms of what they're capable of compared to previously, and that's the kind of trying to figure out what a person's is actually saying to a system. I mean, most systems, most web applications, most mobile applications have always driven people down a very specific menu-driven kind of way of operating an application. And I think with chatbots and with voice bots, we're getting to a point where the user is able to explicitly ask for what they want. And we're kind of getting to the point where we understand what the user's saying. We're able to fulfill certain needs that user has at that point. And I think that's where the real advancement is going to come in with bots, is when we start to understand more and more what the user's real intent is. At the moment, we can kind of, it's a bit of a trick. We're able to understand the intent relatively well with some of the cognitive services and various different artificial intelligence systems that most major companies are building. But I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll start to see leaps and bounds in that area where we really truly understand what the user's saying from freeform English, rather than having to drive a user down a very specific menu structure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think for me, there's the big leap is, like I say, it's the difference between something being a command line driven. So, we're all geeks. We used to kind of typing in commands, and really the first generation of stuff was, yes, it was a bot sat in whatever your IRC channel or your instant messenger, but fundamentally you were typing in a command as a string, and you had to get it in a specific order and a specific syntax and that kind of thing. And I guess, the tipping point that starts to make it maybe a bit more AI is this idea that you haven't got to structure your request. It can figure out from the keywords and things in what you're asking for, isn't it? But yeah, okay, that's good. It's still definitely early days. I think we probably all agree on that.
A lot of the work that I've been doing recently, we build a lot of chatbots, but most of the customers which we're speaking to want to create some kind of voice system or voice control on top of that chatbot, as well as just creating plain chatbots. And so chat's one of those, or speech to text kind of algorithms, systems that I think are really at the sort of 2003 stage of the touch. If I look at the touch metaphor of like how touch phones were in 2003, 2004, when they were all just capacitive screens and they were totally rubbish, and that you would press on them and you would hammer different sections, but you never really got the thing that you wanted. And then all of a sudden the iPhone came out in 2007 and touch interfaces were forever changed. We're kind of in that 2004 moment with speech detection and speech intent, where things are kind of hit and miss. And yes, it sort of works, but it sort of doesn't as well. And it's really frustrating, and most users avoid it. But we're going to get to that pivotal point when speech and intent are fully understood by computer systems. And then we get to this magical moment where people then are far more accepting of the technology. But at the moment, I think for the vast majority of people, they can be quite frustrating, these AI systems and these speech systems.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's quite interesting that, again, it's a really good example, actually, the whole, the touch interface. You had the stylus, and it was really like it was really just a replacement for a mouse interface, which wasn't the same thing. And, if you were careful, you could drive it. But for this stuff to kind of become user-friendly, it's got to be easy to do while multitasking, while you're trying to, get the shopping out of the car with one hand and hold the dog with the other, and then you want to be able to shout at it. It's no good sort of it recognizing you if I'm in a nice quiet room with a microphone and I walk up to the device and ask it in calm, plain English. It's when it can kind of work in that real world scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of the big limitations at the moment of chatbots is this onboarding experience. How do you explain to the user what they can say to the bot, what sentences they need to do, how they structure things, and that onboarding experience is really painful. And it's also because the bot doesn't really understand freeform English. It doesn't understand anything that the user could say to it. Only, generally speaking, it only understands a subset of English which it's been programmed to. And I think to get these things really successful, we're going to have to get past that.